Well, I used to sing a lot about the birds and bees and throw in clever lines of philosophy about this modern world we find ourselves living in. But then it struck me on a thinking day, in this enlightened world, there must be a way to make those everyday problems simpler than they've been. When I was young, I went with a girl about a year, cute little thing 16 or near. Her father sat me down one day and said, "Son, well, after all this time, you must have a mind of whether you'll leave or get hitched to the line." I said, "But sir, that's not what he wanted to hear. In this day and age, 16's too late to just be going out on a friendly date. What he wanted me to say was I'd marry his daughter next year." I said, "Mr. Jones, to tell the truth, thinking quite a bit about your Ruth, but I just ain't quite ready to settle down. No, I don't want to worry you or make you fret, but there's things in this world I'd like to get. Might get it someday, but I'm not quite ready yet. No, I'm not quite ready yet." A psychiatrist said I was insecure. If not, I'd have married that girl for sure. And then he asked me to lie on his couch and talk a spell. And when I found I neither hated my mother nor father, he started in again on Jonesy's daughter. When I said I didn't hate her either, he stood up to yell. He said, "Son, you gotta hate someone, it's normal. Come on, loosen up, don't be so formal. Go on, lie down again and try to think somebody I hate." Well, I was just a lad, but it seemed to be there's enough hate around out starting on me. And I didn't hate anyone but that psychiatrist beginning to rate. I said, "Doctor, won't you lend an ear? I'm just a young guy, but I have a fear. The world just ain't quite ready for folks like me. Now, I don't want to worry you or make you fret, but these folks in this world ain't learned hate yet. We might learn someday, but we're not quite ready yet. No, we're not quite ready yet." Came along, time got gone. I was 18 years when I started this tome. Things ain't changed a whole lot since way back then. There's still folks out there preaching hate. Lord knows how youth has the courage to date. Now and then it changed the last verse of this old song. 'Cause average folks still struggle through life. Guy down the street still cheats on his wife. And I keep learning new things I sure already knew. And about the hate theme that runs through this tune, some fool brings it to you, you get up and leave the room. Me, I still don't hate anyone, but I've learned why some people do. So I ask, won't you kindly lend an ear? I'm just a songwriter, but I have a fear. The world still ain't quite ready for folks like me. Now, I don't want to worry you or make you fret, but what you give to this world is what you're likely to get. God might change that someday, but he's not quite ready yet. No, he's not quite ready yet.
Russ Edwards. Welcome, Russ, to Fiddles and Frets.
Nice to be here, Ray. This is a unexpected and very pleasant surprise.
Well, I should say I'm going to Fiddles and Frets will end the end of March, and you are our last interview.
Wow.
Last but not least.
Guess I should be doubly flattered. Thank you so much.
You have an interesting history, and I thought maybe you could kind of let people give a little history lesson about yourself.
The Reader's Digest version?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
The Reader's Digest version was that I accidentally got into music when I was 15 years old. When I was somewhere around 16 years, through the same set of accidents, I wound up opening for a bunch of grand old Opry acts. I learned a song called The Auctioneer that got me a lot of attention because only me, the guy, and the guy who wrote it were doing it. That led me to having my own radio show when I was 16 years old. That brought me the attention of some record people. I wound up recording for Cameo, Parkway I wound up recording for Scenic Records, and that led me to Cameo Parkway Records, and that led me to Decca Records, and that led me to Pappy Daly's Musicor Records, where I worked with George Jones. Actually, George Jones was a label. The rest of us were just trying to make a record here and there. And that sort of just led me to keeping doing music for the rest of my life.
And in terms of when you were recording, when was that? It was in the 60s?
It was in the mid to late 60s, started in the early 60s. I started recording for my first label contract when was when I was like 16 or 18 years old. So it started out. I started at the top, and I've been working my way to the bottom ever since. So.
And so you, at that time, that's when country was country. Before all the pop stars of the 70s went down the tubes and they went to Nashville.
Well, actually, when I started doing this, I actually started out as a mimic. These stories get way too long to tell on a radio show, but somebody recognized that when I sang other people's songs, I sort of sounded like the people that recorded the songs. Somebody brought that to my mother's attention because my mother hadn't been listening to me. We had a supermarket, and my brother and I had an apartment on the 3rd floor, so all she knew was I was upstairs with a guitar keeping myself out of trouble. So my brother brought it to her attention, and he says, well, Tommy, that's my maiden name, Thomas. She said, Tommy's up there, I said, when we take him, take him to these Grand Ole Opry shows, and he comes home and he sounds like the guys that that did the music. So Mom asked me one day, she said, bring your guitar downstairs and let me listen to what you're doing, and I did that, and she brought me to the attention of a local disc jockey, who brought me to the attention of some local performers, who brought me to the attention of some guys that were coming through with the Grand Ole Opry. And somehow I wound up being this 15, 16-year-old, 6'1", 146-pound kid who could mimic all of the country artists. I started writing songs because I only knew how to mimic the people that I had heard, and I had no idea what the heck I sounded like. So I started writing songs just to find out what I sounded like, to see if I could write a song. If I never heard anybody sing it, of course, the first song I sang, I sort of wrote in the style of Farron Young, so I sang it like Farron Young. And next song I sort of wrote it in the style of John Cash, so I sounded like John Cash. So I actually wrote a couple of songs in minors to, something I had never heard anybody do before. And that led to this thing of my doing a cross between... There's a famous local disc jockey, used to be famous years ago, who says that he wrote somewhere that I was one of the earliest innovators of the country folk pop synergy. I don't know what the hell that means, but it sounds really cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds great, so I use it on occasion.
I'll tell you what, why don't we have another song, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how long ago you wrote it and what it is about.
Oh, one of those old things?
Yeah, one of those old things.
One of those old things? Let me see if I can think of an old thing. Okay, this would be a good way to go, because this is a song that I wrote back around the time that I started mixing up the genres without knowing what I was doing. Matter of fact, this was written by a woman, started to be written about a woman that I met back in Philadelphia Folk Festival days, and turned out to be not about her, because songs take their own direction. You understand that. This is called Susan by the Water. Oh, Susan by the water sleeping, soft winds gently sweeping, kiss her tenderness. And I sit watching quietly, she turns and I can almost see her gentleness. When the sun comes down to kiss her eyes, I watch her rise, she turns, she runs, she's gone. And in the spot where Susan lay, think about my busy day. Must move along. My business world, the lying, cheating, 10% I keep repeating Susan's name. Will I do my best, but like the rest, tell myself it's all part of the dollar game. Oh, but late at night when dreams will play, I think about the day she'll turn from me. Then my little girl, out in my cold business world, and I'm to blame. Now Susan by the water sleeping, soft winds gently sweeping, kiss her tenderness. And I sit watching quietly, she turns and I can almost see her gentleness. When the sun comes down to kiss her eyes, I watch her rise, she turns, she runs, she's gone. And in the spot where Susan lay, think about my busy day. Must move along. Now Susan by the water sleeping, soft winds gently sweeping, kiss her tenderness. And I sit watching quietly, she turns and I can almost see her gentleness.
And you just tuned in, that's Russ Edwards. That's a nice song, Russ.
Thank you.
I think that's the first time I ever saw you finger pick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to hang around more. I do a little bit. Actually, you see how badly I did it. I have to apologize. Usually before I do something like this, I work for an hour before I come and do an interview or something.
Uh-huh.
But my friend who I'm staying with in Norristown happens to live over a law office, and I'm not allowed to make noise up there in the daytime until they close the office, so I didn't have a chance to practice for, get my voice going for an hour. So.
I don't know. Sounds pretty sounds pretty good to me. Now, you... back in your, I don't know if your Decca days or what days it was, you actually were given a stage name, correct?
Well, actually, my stage name is. Let me clarify this for anybody that might care. When I was a kid, and I decided that I wanted to do this, my mom went to a couple of people and said, "My real name is Tom Thomas Hilferty, Hilferty. It's an unusual Irish name." And Mom went to some of the people she knew, some of the local performers she knew. She said, "Tommy needs a stage name because he's going to do some stuff." And there was a marvelous country performer at the time named Rusty Kiefer. Mm-hmm. Called himself Clown Prince of the Banjo. And my hair was reddish, sort of. And he said, "I'll loan you my name, but you got to take care of it." He says, "You can be Rusty if you want." So my mom looked at me and she went, "Yeah, Rusty sounds good. Let's go with Rusty." And my middle name is Edward, so I got to be Rusty Edwards, which was the way I was billed for the first couple of years. And when I went with Scenic Records, for some reason or another, they thought that Rusty Edwards the Rusty was too cute and the Edwards was too mundane. So we came up with the name of Sean Thomas. And I recorded for Scenic Records as Sean Thomas, and I recorded for Cameo Parkway Records as Sean Thomas. And didn't do much with Scenic, but we sold a whole ton of records with Cameo Parkway. And then I got in a little trouble with the Cameo Parkway record, a little social trouble. And by the time I sort of tried, and I couldn't get another contract because of this problem that I created. And when I went with Decca, they took me to Decca as Russ Edwards. We just took the Rusty and we made it Russ. And
okay.
So I went back to being Russ Edwards. So the best thing or worst thing that happened in my life was that I had some success, and then I changed my name, and then I had another group of successes, but nobody connects the Russ Edwards and Sean Thomas thing.
Uh-huh.
So, but I was both of those people.
You told me an interesting story one time about a song that outsold the Beatles in a certain part of Pennsylvania, as I remember.
I did a record with Decca, and I didn't write it. It's I was up in New York. See, these record companies were recording me with orchestras and background singers and all that stuff, and all I wanted to do was go to Nashville with those 6 great musicians, and, the 3 or 4 voices, and make music. And these record companies that I was with were after Teenage Idol type things, and they were sort of recording me with orchestra. So anyway, the long story is that I went into a short story version is I was in I think it was Bell Sound in New York, and Jimmy Whistler was arranging stuff, and Madera White, the great rock and roll producers of the 60s and 70s, were producing me. And while the session was going on, the guys snuck out to pick up Chinese food around the corner to bring back to the studio. And while they were out, they saw a newspaper article, and it said, "Peggy Ann Safe, Mountain Man dead." Now, you might be old enough to know, to remember that there was a girl kidnapped by this crazy mountain man up in the Tuscarora Mountains back late 60s, I guess. And it was Shade Gap, Pennsylvania. Anyway, it struck them that this was an ideal story for Russ Edwards to do. So they came back up into the studio, and while I was recording this whole recording session with violins and voices and blah, 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 they were in the back room writing this thing called The Ballad of Shade Gap. And they brought it out at the end of the session. They let the violin players go home, kept the rhythm section, kept the singers, and said, "We're going to do one more song." And I looked at this thing, and where'd this come from? And they said, well, they gave me a copy of the newspaper, and I read over the newspaper. There were FBI agents that got killed. There were cops that got killed. This girl was dragged through the mountains for 8 days. And I looked at them, and I said, no. I'm not doing this song. And they said, "Oh, you're doing the song." And I said, "No, I'm not doing this song. There are people who got killed. There were people who were hurt. There'll be people scarred for the rest of their lives. I'm not going to be involved in exploiting a situation like this." So they called the vice president of Decca Records at midnight and got him out of bed, and he came down to the studio, and he said, "Russ, let me put it this way. You either do this song or we cancel your contract." Now, I'm stupid, but I ain't that stupid. So the truth of the matter is, I will apologize this for everyone ever involved. I intentionally did a bad job recording this song. My doing a bad job seemed to make no difference whatsoever to this record. This thing outsold the Beatles up in eastern Pennsylvania. We probably sold 250,000 records. As a matter of fact, to this day, just a couple of weeks ago, I have one of those silly MySpace sites.
Right.
I'll sneak it in, MySpace, Russ Edwards Music. And every now and then I get a note on my MySpace site, "Oh, are you the Russ Edwards that recorded the Ballad of Shade Gap back when?" Because my grandmother's got like 5 copies in plastic in the bottom of a trunk, and if we can come, would you autograph them for us? Because they've been sitting there all these years.
That's amazing.
So we sold a ton of records. The trick about my recording it badly, because I didn't want anybody to be hurt. I didn't want it to do well. Mm-hmm. And while the thing was getting played a lot and all of this stuff up in that part of the country, somebody said, "Well, we want you to do some personal appearances up there." Oh, good. Now I'm going to exploit. Now I'm going to make money with this thing that I didn't want to exploit. And one day they told me, they said, "Well, Peggy Ann Bradnick, the girl who was kidnapped, was supposed to do an appearance with you, but she got a better offer down the street." And I went, "Oh," and I went and screwed up this record by doing it badly because I didn't want to hurt her, and she's out exploiting the situation. So it struck me afterwards that sometimes you just ought to do the best you can and let the cards fall where they may. But yeah, I had this record that outsold the Beatles up in that part of Pennsylvania.
That's funny. Tell you what, let's hear another tune here, Russ.
Now, see, you think I came prepared to do all of these songs. So what I'll do, we'll give you this. This thing. We sold a lot of records with Decca Records when I went with Decca. So this is Russ Edwards again now. This is after Sean Thomas. This is Russ Edwards. This is called Small Talking. I've been ruined and I've been destructed. My good name's been dragged by the roots from its foundation, and it wasn't done by no fast-talking liars or by some mighty men from some heartache and not just my imagination. Packing my bags and I'm turning in my room key, and I'm looking for a world where there ain't so much procrastination and no small talk by small people on a Sunday morning neath the church steps steeple. Just small talking by small people neath the eyes of he who sees. Small talking by small people on a Sunday morning neath the church steps steeple. Just small talking by small people. Now look what it's done to me. Small talking by small people. Now look what it's done to me. Call 911. I used to have enough breath to do that.
I was going to ask you, I want to talk about the current time, but I have one more question about before.
Okay.
Did you do a lot of touring then?
No, there's a. I actually shouldn't break this mythology. There are a lot of legends and myths that over the last, since I started playing music again about 2.5, 3 years ago, there's a lot of legends and myths that have been built up around me that aren't true, and I have let them go because it's fun to have people talking about me. The truth of the matter is, when I was 26 years old, I worked every day of my life. I worked a regular job, just like most of the people listening to this show and most of the musicians that are out there today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we play nights and we play weekends, and you know, I'm an engineer by profession. I'm a Drexel Institute of Technology kid, and I was recording, and I would go out on. I had to deal with my company, be able to leave the office early on Friday. And I'd tour the weekends. I'd go out on Friday, do Saturday night, maybe something Sunday. I was back at my desk at 9 o'clock on Monday morning because I didn't trust music.
Yeah.
And there's a cute story about I went in one Monday morning. I did a television show one Sunday afternoon, and Monday morning I went into the office, and my secretary said, the sales manager wants to talk to you. And I went upstairs to talk to the sales manager, and he said, I saw you on television yesterday. And I told him, I said, I beg your pardon? He says, I saw you on television yesterday. I said, not me. And he said, Russ, it was you. And I said, because I was Russ Hilferty. I was this other guy.
Right.
He said, I know it was you. And I said, I said, I've heard there's some guy out there that sort of looks like me, and, you know, he does music or something like that. And he says, Russ, it was you. And I said, if I was on television yesterday and if I had a hit record, what the hell would I be doing here this morning? I mean, so I kept the two lives totally separate. But when I toured, it would be I'd take a couple of weeks vacation, and I'd go out and do some touring that way. I'd go out down to Nashville to do some recording. I'd go out to California to record if I got a chance to go out with the guys and, you know, do the cowboy thing. My lady calls it going out and playing cowboy. And when I was 26 years old, I decided to be in business for myself. So I started building actually more than one company, so that when I decided to go out and tour or go out and decided to be the music guy, that there was something back here that was making an ongoing income.
Right, right. You also know some people that we would recognize. I know Chubby Checker, right?
Chubby Checker has been a friend of mine since I've been a kid, and as of yesterday afternoon, I think he was still my friend. Yeah, we still hang out.
Did you grow up in the same area?
No, we had the same manager.
Oh, okay.
The guy who managed and made Chubby Checker happen is the guy who found me and brought me to record companies and so on and so forth. And Chubby was very encouraging about. He thought I had a career. I wrote some music for him, and I wrote some records for him, and we sold some records together. But to this day, we're very, very best friends.
What are some other people that at least you've maybe worked with?
The list gets long, and it sounds audacious, and it's not nice to be a name dropper. I know Her Majesty told me so.
Drop some names. Drop some names.
Her Majesty told me it's not nice to drop names. I worked with Farron Young. I worked with Pharrell and Husky. I worked with Hank Snow. I worked several times with John Cash. Hall & Oates used to be my backup band back before they were Hall & Oates. I've worked with Madera and White. I've worked with Len Barry of 1-2-3 fame and the Dovells fame back in the Philadelphia era. Oh, I've screwed that one up, didn't I've met Bob Dylan. I hung out with Chris Christopherson. I think I might have told you one time if everybody who ever touched this guitar had signed it, it'd be worth $2 million.
Well, I was going to say that. How old is that guitar?
This is like a mid '60s Guild D40.
Yeah,
and it's the only Guild D40 I've ever touched that sounds like this, and I just take it everywhere important. I have 4 other guitars, and I play them on occasion. But when I go in the studio, this goes with me. If I'm doing something important, this goes with me. This is the guitar. Oh, yeah, and I sat on a living room floor one night and played guitar with Elvis Presley for a couple of hours.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Back when we were children.
Well, I'll tell you what, we don't have a lot of time. I want you to do a couple more songs, so why don't you do one now. We'll come back for a brief wrap-up, and then I'll have you finish out on the tune.
Okay. I see. I didn't come prepared to do a whole bunch of songs, which I guess I probably should have because you gave me a heads up on how this is supposed to work. Here's a very, 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 very country song that I wrote recently. I usually introduce this song by saying this is a song about a guy who never got it, doesn't get it now, and probably never will get it. I met him at a bar one afternoon. He said, "Sit down, man. Let me buy you a beer." And then he told me a story. He said, "Pretty soon now she's gonna call me on the phone. She's gonna beg me to forgive her, beg me to come home. She knows she can reach me in this bar. It's where I always come to wait it out when things have gone this far. Third still from the payphone, second wedding ring. One more round and I'll pretend I didn't say that awful thing. And maybe I'll forget she said she's gonna take the kids and leave. Third stool from the payphone, my land of make-believe. Pretty soon now she's gonna call me on the phone. She's gonna cry and say she's sorry, tell me she was wrong. 3 days now I've been living in this bar, sitting on the stool till closing time, sleeping in my car. Third still from the payphone, second wedding ring. One more round and I'll pretend I didn't say that awful thing. And maybe I'll forget she said she's gonna take the kids and leave. Third stool from the payphone, my land of make-believe. Pretty soon now she's gonna call me on the phone. She's gonna beg me to forgive her, beg me to come home. He said, any minute now she's gonna call me on that phone.
And we've been listening to Russ Edwards sing live here in the studio, which is my living room. And we're going to have Russ, you go out on a song, but I wanted to, what are you doing these days?
Another Reader's Digest version. I, as you know, but your listeners don't. I sort of lost an argument with a tractor and trailer in 1993 that took me off the planet for 12 years. I mean, took me off the planet. I didn't talk to anybody. I locked myself in a room for several years. I was hurt pretty bad. About 2.5, 3 years ago, I was passing by a coffee house. I live in Barrington, New Jersey. And there was a sign up that said open mic Thursday night. Now, I didn't know what open mic was, but I went home and I told my lady, I said, you know, there's this sign that says open mic, and it sounds like it might be live music. And she knows I hadn't been out in public in 8 years, and she said, are you thinking about going there? And I said, yeah, I am. And she just looked up at the ceiling and went, thank you, God. And I went down to this place, Barrington Coffee House, and I sat in the back. And it was cool because it was November, so I had my coat on, I had my collar up, and I had my sunglasses on, my hat on. I was all protected from the world. And there was these local people that sang live music, and some of them were pretty darn good. Some of them were some open mic people. You've done open mic,
right?
And
you get what you get.
Yes, it was very cool. And I went back a second Thursday, and I sat there and I listened. And the third Thursday that I went back, the guy who runs the Barrington Coffee House music venue, Triff, walks down the aisle and holds out a guitar, and he says, "You're next." And I told him, I said, "What do you mean I'm next? I mean, I'm just here listening." He says, "Nah," he says, "some of the older guys remember seeing you up at Festival years ago, and they say you were pretty good. They don't remember your name, but you play us a couple of songs." And he caught me so off guard. I grabbed a guitar, I went up and played 3 songs, and I've been playing ever since. So now I'm doing some shows here and there, little shows. I've done a couple of concerts in small venues, Barrington Coffee House, and I've done some stuff over at World Cafe Live for the Philly to New Orleans fundraiser stuff. And basically about a year ago, some friends of mine convinced me that maybe I'm not too old to get serious about this again. So I've actually now I'm soliciting gigs and I'm soliciting stuff, and I'm getting ready to do, God forgive me, I'm getting ready to do another album. I mean, a full 12, 14 song album with some musicians that I've worked with years ago and stuff like that.
And I know you've mentioned before to me, it's the first time you actually have to pay for a record.
It's the first time in my entire life I will ever have to pay for studio time. Everything I've ever done, the demos that I've done, the recording sessions that I've done, they were either, some of the best engineers in the country are friends of mine, and they'd call me up if I happened to be in Los Angeles or New York or Nashville or wherever I were, Philadelphia. They'd call me up and say, "The last session's 1 o'clock. I got some friends of mine that haven't heard you. I'll tell you what. You want to come in at 2 o'clock?" And he said, "You do an hour, and I'll tape it. And if you can take the tape home, and anything you get off it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's so. So this is going to be the first time I've ever had to pay a nickel for recording time, and I'm terrified."
Is there anything that people can get of yours at this moment?
Aside from those old records that I hate, that I understand they're selling on the internet.
Oh, really?
I didn't get paid for them the first time. I guess I'm not going to get paid for them this time either. But I have a CD, and just to even take more of your time, I'll tell you, the CD is a great story. They asked me, after I played for a while at Barrington at their open mic and hanging out with them, they asked me if I would do a show there. And, I'm thinking, well, yeah, do 2 or 3 songs a night is one thing. To do one of my old hour and 15-minute, hour and a half concerts, a whole nother story. So anyway, I eventually agreed to do a show back. I guess it was about 2.5 years ago now. And about 2 or 3 weeks before I did the show, I went over to do the open mic. And back in those days, we did 3 songs because there weren't many people going there. Mm-hmm. And this young lady, blonde, blue-eyed, 20, came up and said, "Were those songs yours?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh," she said, "I love your songs. Where can I get them?" And I said to her, "What do you mean, where can you get them?" And she said, "Well, don't you have a CD or something?" And I wasn't even thinking in terms of CDs. I've been away from music for 12 years. And she looked at me, my friend Ray Naylor, and she said the following, with her blue eyes batting and her big smile on her beautiful teeth. And she said, "But Mr. Edwards, every kid with a $50 guitar has a CD." Now, I didn't know how to respond to that, but I thought, wow. And there's a whole long story, but I won't bore you with the story. But it turns out that I got my hands on some of my old demo work that I had done here and there, and so and I took a whole bunch of demos together and put together a CD, which I sell for $10, and which, thank you God, I've sold 480 copies of this thing over the last 2 years.
Can people get it? In other words, they can contact you through your MySpace.
They can contact me through MySpace, or better yet, they can come out to a show that I do or something like that, because I love to. I mean, the mere idea that people still like my music, and the mere idea of finding young people that like my music, I tell you, I thank God every day, because I had no idea what people would think when they heard my music again.
Well, being on the internet, this program goes all around the world, and it's listened all around the world, because I can tell. They give us charts.
Oh, great.
So anyway, somebody over in Japan, let's say,
is not going to come to one of my shows next week.
That's correct, but they can find you. What is your MySpace again?
It's MySpace/Russ Edwards Music.
Okay. Russ, thank you very much for coming on. It was very very interesting and entertaining.
It's an honor. It is truly an honor. Just sitting here with you is wonderful.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have you do one more song, and again, thank you.
And you're going to edit out all of the mistakes I made, right?
That's right.
I'll give you a brief explanation of this song, as a matter of fact, before I do it, and you're probably running out of time. You can edit the explanation if you want. Back in some months ago, a good friend of mine, remember Giant Gene Arnold? He was rock and roll. He was a rock and roll disc jockey. He needed a lot back in the disco days and so on. Well, he's one of my best friends in the whole world. And they were out in Los Angeles some months ago, and he was out showing my music around, and he wasn't charging me and everything. He was just going around showing my music because we're friends. And he sent me an email, and he said that he and his wife Terry had come up with an idea for a song, and they had a title line. And they sent me a couple of lines here and a couple of lines there. And he says, I think it sounds like a country song. Gene and I have been trying to write a song together for 117 years. And just to humor him, because he was out doing nice things for me, I spent an hour with this little idea that he sent me. And the little idea that he sent me that I spent an hour with has now turned into my new closing theme song. So I will share it with you. I've been washed up, but I've never been washed out. I've been cleaned up and a few times near cleaned out. I'm old enough to know much better, but I still think I can fly. Gonna saddle up my ego, give life another try, and I won't quit now. I've been locked up, but I've never been locked out. Found love but lost the key to love's house. Tried before and I got busted, but I still think I can fly. Gonna saddle up my ego, give life another try, and I won't quit now. Oh, I sailed the 7 seas, flew as high as I could fly. Got stranded in a nightmare, stranded in a lie. But darkness only haunts us if we don't look for the light. I was almost lost forever, but life's worth another try, and I won't quit now. Oh no, I won't quit